Okay, so I've recently been channeling the spirit Nepsi ghosts, and I am noticing that. Oh, wait, my thing's backwards. Oh, well, that's fine. I am noticing that I ended up stumbling upon some things. Let me go back a bit. Nepsi ghost, Tuel, several of the others. I don't have the names right now. Anyways, long story short, it works, okay? So I got into this kind of witch war, or whatever, if you want to call it that. Somebody was targeting me, pursuing me for whatever reason. Something I said or was said to have said or whatever, online or otherwise, I don't know. Anyways, there was some conflict between myself and another woman that targeted me because we both wanted the same guy at some point. And I just kind of walked away and let it go, but she wouldn't stop, and she kept contacting, people like my employers and all manner of things, even from outside the country. So it kind of started a bit of a trouble for me with Becoming Living God affiliates. So there were some of them. I don't know exactly who it is, but she seems like her name is Caitlin, maybe. But there's several of Caitlin, so I don't want to blame the wrong one, obviously, And anyways, I don't care. She is obviously doing this out of her desperation, but it's not a matter of her desperation or her desire that I'm focusing on, right? So, unfortunately, I had to move forward, and I had to study what I was studying. They don't like the way I see things, they don't like the way I do things, and they don't like, most importantly, the way that I pull Christianity into everything, right? Or at least I balance everything off of Christianity. And not Christianity per se in the religious sense of it all, but like Christ and the cross and things they don't believe in, which I know that even if it came from sorcery is still legit, right? At least that's what I feel, that's what I believe, that's what I know to be true in my heart, whether I know or not, right? So anyways, that's a little bit of a backstory to catch you up to speed. Now, through that, I kind of got into a battle with Nepsi ghost, which is their main Hecate. Hecate was the name they called her. And so this spirit is very powerful, and this spirit is the one they evoke, right? Invoke, and they tell themselves that they're almighty powerful and that they have all this power and all this ability to do whatever, right? But they sit there and they don't realize, they don't even try to consider the thought that this spirit is the source of their power, right? So what I was trying to figure out is, okay, they're constantly calling on these spirits, they're constantly making things happen, whatever, whether it's them, something they're doing to aid it, or something the spirit tells them to do to make it happen, regardless, right? So I wanted to learn what is the mechanism behind their craft. And excuse my ugly feet, I didn't realize that was what the camera was facing on. I meant to face on my face, but I can't turn it, so I have to be able to put it back on the book. So I just decided to leave it on the scenery. So what's happening is, essentially I challenged the theory, right? I challenged the status quo, and I wanted to know the mechanism behind the power that manifests as witchcraft, right? So I went and prayed and consulted the spirits that I had come so familiar with, Azazel and many others that just kind of dwell with me. And this time I opened a Ouija board, okay? And I did an online Ouija board in hopes of channeling the spirit, and believe it or not, it opened the gateway like I needed it to. So as long as I have a decent bit of marijuana or a decent bit of calm, now that I was using, oh, by the way, go back. I was using marijuana to essentially blow my brainwave filters, I guess. I don't know how to explain that, but pretty much to cause myself to be, I can't remember if it's delta or theta, I think it's theta, where you're kind of like that partial dream state kind of thing. So what I want to do is dumb down my mind to the extent that that's the only thing I can do for my anxiety, right? Is dumb down my mind to be able to essentially kind of lose touch partially with reality. So I want to do a type of controlled dissociation is my plan, right? And so now that I'm here in California and marijuana is much, more affordable in the sense of legality, because we couldn't have it, where I was at, then I decided to just use that. And I had some trauma. I had a sexual assault happen. It cost me my job and whatever, but it's fine. I'll be back up and running in no time. I just got to get through the system, and I say no time, and it takes a while, right? But the fact of the matter is through this situation, right, it actually ends up being a blessing. Mind you, Lucifuge did tell me that I was going to lose my job. He did tell me there was going to be an incident to cause me to panic. And he did tell me that through that, and this is before this happened, even Azazel even told me, and Lucifuge as well, they were preparing me for the transition that I was going to have to essentially go through the tower. And so when I saw the tower and I pulled the tower on my tarot readings, then I was like, okay, that makes sense. And so I prepared for the letdown and whatever else. And Azazel told me very specifically, I'm getting ready to take everything from you. And then I'm going to give it all back. But first, I'm going to rebuild you. Like he said, I'm going to make you understand. You're going to get everything that you asked for. It's just going to be a little difficult because that's the only way I can do it. And so the idea here regarding demons, the common, conception regarding them is that they're evil. And the reason why they do the things that cause so much hardship is because their maliciousness, and they just want to punish us. They just want to force us to work for it. But the fact of the matter is that is not entirely true. See, because the fact of the matter is that these spirits actually only have so much power. So the only thing that demons and God alike don't have power over is man's free will. And so they can manipulate, they can mess with your emotions, they can mess with your mentality, they can cause you to see things, they can cause you to believe things, they can cause you to desire things, but they can never mess with your free will, right? And so the biggest message in that is that they don't have the power to move everything at will when it comes to, like, to snap a magic wand, and push everybody out of the way. Because part of our growth is what we ask for, right? And that's part of the transition. That's part of the experience. So what happens is that you end up coming to a point where you have to just sit there and face facts. You have no one, you have to sit by yourself, you have to learn. And I just started pushing people away. I just got tired of dealing with people in general. And no matter how much I care for someone, but the biggest thing is, I no longer have that lack. Yeah, I go without sometimes because I'm not all buddy, but they still offer, to help me, and I still offer them, but I don't have to deal with, people say make friends with people who can help you, make friends with people who will benefit your life, make friends with people who are, better for your life. But the fact of the matter is that these so-called friends are not really friends, because unless your energies are in sync, like the unequal yokeness that they talk about in Christianity, unless your energies are in sync, they're going to be a burden and they're going to hinder your path anyway. So initially what I did is I cast away all my karmics. And I said, well, if I'm going to do this, I don't want karmics to come around as soulmates and to mess me up. But then I started asking about, what is a karmic really? So what is a karmic soulmate? A karmic soulmate is someone to help you regardless if they're going to cause you hardship. And if you find yourself balanced within your own energies, and you find yourself in a sense where you won't be just constantly screaming and attacking and whatever else, because they can abrasively impact your energy core and send you into a spiral of new beginnings and evolution and higher awakening, and just moving and transitioning and shaking things up and helping you get on your path without all that constant fighting, without all that constant drama. And so that's the biggest thing I'm noticing about soulmates. But even then, you sometimes are just better off with yourself, right? So with that being said, I'm going to do really quick what I had here. I'm on the Book of Adam and Eve. Now this is called the Most Complete 150 Book Apocrypha. It's featuring the 1st through 3rd Enoch, the Book of Giants, Jasher, Pseudepigrapha, or however you say that, Deuterocanonical texts, Apocalypses, Gnostic Gospels, Sibylline Oracles, and more, right? So this is a really huge type of apocryphal book. You've got Esdras, Maccabees, Baruch, all the Baruchs, all the Enochs, all 3 Adam and Eves, Letter of Jeremiah, Prayer of Azariah, Prayer of Manasseh. And forgive me if I'm butchering these names, I know I probably am. Bel and the Dragon, Susanna, Wisdom of Sirach, Wisdom of Solomon, Tobit, Judith, Eldad and Modad, Janes and Jambres, additional Esther, additional Psalms, Vida, Ade, et Ave, Slavonic, Vida, Ade, et Ave, Apostles' Creed, Melchizedek, Apocalypse of Adam, Apocalypse of Paul, Apocalypse of Moses, Apocalypse of Abraham, Apocalypse of Zephaniah, 1st Maccabean, all the way through 3rd, Jasher, Jubilees, Testaments of the 12 Patriarchs, Testament of Reuben, Testament of Simeon, Testament of Levi, Testament of Judah, Testament of Issachar, Testament of Zebulun, Testament of Dan, Testament of Naphtali. And again, I'm sure I butchered all these, but those are like all the books, and there might be more. Hang on, let me see. I don't think so. I think that's all of them that this has. And so, oh no, I lied. There's tons of them. There's Testament of Gad, Testament of Asher, Testament of Joseph, Testament of Benjamin, Sibylline Oracles, all the way through what looks like 15 and some fragments of Zadokite work, Giants, Story of Akar, however you say that, Ascension of Isaiah, Testament of Abraham, Testament of Moses, Testament of Solomon, Psalms of Solomon, Odes of Solomon, the New Apocrypha, which is 1st and 2nd Clement, Tertullian on spectacles, Tertullian on prayer, Tertullian on patience, Tertullian on martyrs, Tertullian on apparel of women 1 and 2, Tertullian on exhortation to chastity, additional Corinthians, martyrdom of Ignatius, however you say that, martyrdom of Polycarp, martyrdom of Isaiah, epistle of Jesus Christ and King Abgarus, epistle of Barnabas, epistle of Paul and Seneca, epistle of Paul to the Laodiceans, epistle of Ignatius to the Ephesians, epistle of Ignatius to the Magnesians, epistle of Ignatius to the Trallians, epistle of Ignatius to the Romans, epistle of Ignatius to the Philadelphians, epistle of Ignatius to the Smyrnians, epistle of Ignatius to the Polycarp, epistle of Polycarp to the Philippians, epistle of Pliny and King Trajan, epistle of Methodus to Diognetus, however you say that, epistle of Peter to Philip, epistle of Ptolemy, epistle of Pontius Pilate, epistle of Herod to Pontius Pilate, epistle of Pontius Pilate to Herod, report of Pontius Pilate to Tiberius Caesar, report of Pontius Pilate to Augustus Caesar, trial and condemnation of Pilate, death of Pilate, shepherd of Hermas, gospel of Thomas, gospel of Philip, secret gospel of Mark, gospel of Bartholomew, gospel of Nicodemus, lost gospel of Peter, fragments of Greek gospel of Thomas, Oxyrhynchus 1224 gospel, Egerton gospel, gospel to the Egyptians, gospel of the Nazareans, Oxyrhynchus 840 gospel, gospel of the Nativity of Mary, Protevangelium, Arabic gospel of the infancy of the Savior, infancy gospel of Thomas, gospel of Pseudo Matthew, gospel of truth, lost sayings gospel Q, passion of the Siletan martyrs, dialogue of the Savior, preaching of Peter, Basilides, epiphanies on righteousness, Acts of Peter and the 12 apostles, Didashi, or however you say that, prayer of thanksgiving, Synodos, Nicene Creed, traditions of Matthias, however you say that, Epistula Apostolorum, pre-Markan Passion narrative, Athanasian Creed, Avenging of the Savior, glossary, and the thank you for reading. See, there's tons of these, right? So I go and I'm thinking, I'm working with these spirits, and I'm like, okay, Nepsi Ghost pretty much told me that she was going to challenge me for the power over my mind, over my consciousness, right? So I would essentially be possessed, right? Was the goal. And so I had God and whatever, and I felt Gabriel, and I've been seeing a lot more indigo flashes to St. Michael. There's lots of things that are happening, and these are just spirits, right, that I challenged or whatever, because all this started because I was trying to get them off me. I couldn't get the church to help. I couldn't get anybody to help. Everybody said I was crazy. I was on so much medication. They even took my son, even though they didn't have the power of the courts, right? I just didn't have the money to force them to give him back, and it was a civil matter, so there was nothing I could do, right? And mark my words, they did not have the power of the courts. The problem is I didn't have the money for a lawyer. They said, yeah, you'll win this, no questions asked. Even with the diagnosis, yeah, as long as this, and this. Okay, well, all that's standard. That makes sense. I knew that was the case. Okay, yeah, when do you want to get started? It'll be $5,000 down. And I'm like, well, I don't have that. And so I couldn't get a lawyer. And so I lost my son. But anyways, that's one of the major factors that I'm having to deal with, is that I wasn't mentally ill. I wasn't crazy. And instead of somebody trying to help me, and instead of the church trying to come and help me and saying I'm being kind of harassed by demons, it's like an infestation of sorts, simply because somebody did black magic, and they didn't realize it was a generational curse that was blocking me from escaping it. And so, and it was also my inability to handle the stress, right? Which compounded the impact, the potency of the generational curse. The generational curse is a bloodline curse, and it naturally occurs from the naturally occurring cocoon. So if your family in general has this thing where they hit 1, 2, 3 generations and they go boom, then what happens is you get a generational curse. And you have to break that generational curse by overcoming its judgment while still being the person that you made yourself to be. So that was another factor I had to deal with, right? Long story short, I lost everything. Everything went to chaos, everything went to hell, and I had no idea what was going on. I was just trying to prove I wasn't crazy. So, in working with spirits, I have come to realize that I am in fact not crazy. Often I will be shown something or told something or given something, led on some little trail or whatnot, with synchronicities and whatever, and my desire, my seeking of it. And so what happens is that you go down the rabbit hole and you start to realize that things are not what they seem. And it's really sad, but there's evidence of the church adulterating documents from past histories. And they're making it look like something it's not. The original perception of the original human had to do with their intuition. And in the book of Adam and Eve, they were fortunately unable to omit that, kind of unable to hide that somehow. And so the ancient language that they spoke was not a language at all. About the time they started writing was shortly after they started speaking. And so as far back as written language, written communication, they had to learn to speak before they could learn to draw or write. The reason for this is because the essence of the voice and the way it's shaped and the way it comes out is the general raw expression of mankind. And so when you come to that place where you're just expressing in general your fears or your concerns or whatever else, it projects in a certain way from the outward of the vocal, from the mouth, that what happens is that the tongue, being the serpent, helps enunciate, right? But it also brings us further ahead than we should be. So in that respect, take that, I think metaphor is the right word. If you take that, then you start to realize that if you look back at ancient drawings, their basic arrows and their basic shapes Very, very basic. That was the first written language. And they would draw pictures of what they saw. That was also the first written language. So what's happening here is that people are not understanding where God comes from. And where God comes from is actually from inside man. Go back to the original garden. No, this is one thing that might baffle me for a while, because you have to figure out the scientific explanation for the human genome. Once you can figure out the scientific explanation for the human genome and everything else that comes forth, then you can start to say, okay, this was a creator pattern, and I can identify this. I can prove this without a doubt. That means it's irrefutable evidence, right? As it stands, don't have that. So I'm not going to go as far back as the garden. But what I am going to say is that in the book of Adam and Eve, it does say that, hang on. Hang on, I'm trying to find it. The Cave of Treasures. Take my soul, take my rep, oh God, I dwelt in the garden. God, look upon Adam. Here we go. In the first page, book of First Adam and Eve. It says, when our father Adam and Eve left the garden, they walked on the ground. Sorry, excuse the light. It's the sun. They walked on the ground with their feet, not realizing they were walking. Where are they at? Not realizing they were walking. When they reached the opening of the garden gate and saw the broad earth spread before them, covered with large and small stones and sand, they were terrified. They trembled, fell on their faces, and appeared as if they were dead, because they were so afraid. They had been in the garden, beautifully planted with all kinds of trees, and now found themselves in a strange land they did not know and had never seen. At that time, they were filled with the grace of a bright nature and did not have hearts turned towards earthly things. Do you see that? That is the fall from grace. Now, if you know what grace is, there was a church that helped me get out here that I got stranded and everything. And he made sure to reinforce that for me. I knew it, but I never was able to explain it the way he did, which was very short to the point and just like it should be. Grace is receiving something good that you did not deserve, is what he says. Which is not the truth. You do deserve it. Everybody deserves it. But it's something that you may not have earned, right? And so that's grace, like food stamps and like housing and all this welfare. That's all just a pattern of grace, right? Those are programs of grace. That is the mentality there that is behind that is grace, right? That's the drive, that's the purpose, that's the heart behind it. So when you think that Adam and Eve were fallen from grace, they were fallen from grace because they were shunned into the natural world. So a type of fall from grace has to do with the experience. And then it goes further, and I'll read that. And it says their eyes were not the same. So before I go back and read that, just think of that. That's the third eye. That's your attunement to both planes of reality. They're in the highest spirit planes with God, but they're simultaneously in the world. That is a type of bilocation that has to do with spiritual discernment. And this is the way that things unfolded, right? And this is something I don't want to say with 100% with beyond the shadow of the doubt statement type intent here. I don't want you to think that that's what I'm saying. I'm sure I could be wrong, and if I am, I would be happy to see the evidence, because I am just trying to learn. I'm not trying to tell anybody anything. I'm just trying to share what I found and hopefully use this to be able to bring everybody together so that we can stop fighting and we can see our differences for what they are. Our differences are not obstacles for our interpersonal and business communications and relationships. That is the conglomerate of society. Our issues, our failures, our fears, our traumas, our dislikes, our likes, whatever, all these ideas, all these experiences, these all come from different perspectives for a reason. The Tower of Babel was originally in the time of the first people, okay? It was not way up higher in history. It was in the origin. I mean, the first few thousand years of humankind was where the Tower of Babel is, okay? At least the first 10,000 at most, okay? And so that's even if our perception of how we measured all that is correct, right? So if you think about it, the Tower of the Babel, and I was shown how he scattered them to the four winds, the four corners of earth, and the four corners of heaven. So where the four corners of earth meet the four corners of heaven is exactly where they were scattered to, right? So that's what happened. They were simultaneously in heaven and earth at the same time, because heaven is just a higher state of the astral plane. It's a higher vibration, and it's so high that it becomes spirit, okay? And then there's, let me go back on that because I'm not clear on that. It's a type of frequency that is a very specific type of attunement. Not necessarily a higher vibration per se. But yeah, so that's the essence of what was said in the sense of what I'm being shown by the spirits. Now, I challenged Hecate so much that she challenged me because I knew who she was. She was an Epsigos from the Testament of Solomon. And so I recognized her. So she's going back and showing me her lifetimes. And where she came from was the ancient Ishtar. She was Cleopatra. She was all these Calypso. She was, I don't think Calypso was a good guy. She was Cleopatra. Calypso was Lower Egypt. She was Cleopatra. She was Nama. She was Jezebel. She was all these things, all these spirits, right? The difference is this is her primal human state. So she is not concerned with the welfare of those who are not under her covering, right? So that's where that came from. So the idea here is, unfortunately, in this modern world, we have come to a place where all the cruelties and, most importantly, the hypocrisies and the falsehood, the lies that were fed by the church and the Jewish foundations and whatever else that went out and started the Crusades, all this is what's happening. Even Islam, even their founding fathers, I guarantee you, their people and their holy places did the same thing. Everybody did the same thing. And so what happens is that we have this huge misunderstanding of what could be the most beautiful concept that anybody could ever hope to discover in this modern world, right? Or for sure in this modern world. Because now we have the power behind magic. We have the power behind voice. We know how to draw sigils and why they're drawn as they are. Because the purpose of the spirit that you call on, or the purpose of the energy body, whether a separate entity in terms of personified or just simply a body of energy that you've harnessed and harvested and want to make something with, right? So, or that you want to harvest and make something with. So what happens here is that you don't need the spirits to do these things. And that is the message that I bring. You don't have to come to one god or the other. You don't have to come to one demon or the other. You don't have to light your candles and evoke the spirits, because the spirits are there, honey, because the spirits are mixed in with our ancestors. The spirits are mixed in with the so-called fallen watchers. For all of us that are not in the covering of Christianity, we are to wander the earth. That means our spirits are free for the taking. Our souls are free to harvest if we are unworthy. And that's why I go after things as I do, because if somebody's mute, they're mute because they were meant to be mute. Not in the physical world, but once they're in the astral plane, once they're disembodied and they've left this physical plane. And that is the ultimate key of necromancy. But you have to have a pure spirit to wield it. You know why? Because you challenge somebody with a pure spirit. But the fall from grace, in the sense of the change of the countenance and the change of the perspective and the change of everything, is just the same no matter where you go or what you do, because this God exists no matter what presence this God carries. This God exists no matter if this God is outside in a higher plane, that maybe he's one of the ancient vampires of the older societies that came out and actually achieved his means. And as it were, he became as he sought to become. Okay? And so thus he is, or she, or whatever. So the idea here behind this is that they actually end up being the guardians and the watchers of the towers of the high places of the human race. And so, technically, unfortunately, what's happening here is that the Anunnaki are actually us. Not all of us, not all humankind. We have been called in accordance, and everybody will find their path as they're meant to, no matter how long it takes, because it can't be done without us. That's why we're so heavily protected by the higher planes. We're the ones to shake it up. We're the ones to make it happen. We're the pilgrims out in the wilderness. We're the pioneers. So we're the ones who have to come and bring it all together. And if we don't, it's not going to happen. And so it'll just be prolonged. Because the fact of the matter is upon that fateful day, there is going to be a war against God towards man. There's going to be a war against the gods, so to speak, towards man. Man will rise against man because heart will rise against heart. And the reason for that is because God rises against man. So you have to identify your God factor. You have to identify your God cord. You know how they talk about the silver cord? You have to identify your God cord. You have to identify the facts. And that's the only way you're going to save yourself. So what happens is that time continues, and time is rolled over again and again and again. And we have to continue coming back, because we're the ones who sought to take the power. We're the ones who sought to rule. We're the ones who sought to climb the ancient ways and to learn the sacred arts and to learn the secret sciences. We're the ones who sought the truth above all else. So we're the ones who have been called to manage it. We're the shepherds, but we're not. We're the harvesters. And so we're the birthing mothers.